Hello, everyone. How are you doing? And welcome to another episode of the Dr. Will Show. I am your host, Dr. Will, and I have been waiting on this show. I am here with the president of Final Call. Y'all, if you didn't know the Dr. Will Show was making moves, you need to know right now. We are doing it. It's big time today. Susan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dr. Will. Thanks for having me on your show. I've been looking forward to this.
Thank you for slumming it with me today. I know I'm not Oprah or Dr. Phil yet, but I'm trying to make it. Trying to make it. So today, we will be talking about online education and K through 12. So for those who are watching the show, and for some reason they don't have any idea who you are, which if they do, go get yourself a CAT scan. Um, will you please introduce yourself?
I'd be happy to. I'm Susan Patrick, and I'm currently the president and CEO. INACOL, it's the International Association for K through 12 Online Learning, and it's a nonprofit organization that's been around for 10 years. That the early innovators in school districts, our public schools across the country, even across the world, Canada, Mexico, and across the sea, Europe and Asia, started offering online courses to students that couldn't get access to teachers that they needed to. And it's been a great road. Before that, I was at the US Department of Education over the educational technology programs and helped write the National Education Technology Plan for Congress. So that's really what opened up my eyes to the differences that online learning was making, actually both in K through 12 and higher ed, for opening up access to educational opportunities.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you again very much for being on the show. So we know that K through 12 education has been marred by a one size fits all approach to education children. As we look in different models, school structures, and various ways to individualize and personalize education, where does online learning come into play?
Online learning can come into play in several different ways. I think the way it's most known for is you have students in schools all over the United States, sometimes in rural areas, sometimes in urban areas, and the public schools in Chicago, for example, 40% of their high schools don't even offer a physics teacher. You're saying for every single student in these high schools, they can't access a physics class. And if they want to be college ready, if they want to take physics, go to college, you pretty much need that on your transcript. So in the early days, you're looking at big gaps in opportunity for students. Only 30% of our high schools offer a full range of advanced placement courses, but it goes deeper than that. It includes math and science teacher shortages. It includes access to courses. And the second reason is really around when we're trying to meet every single student's needs. It's really hard for a teacher with a single textbook to look out across the classroom and know where a student may have gaps, where they need to pinpoint and get extra support. So the tools in online learning are great to help empower our educators to provide engaging curriculum, but also support every student's needs so they can catch up and get back on track or even accelerate and go ahead at their own pace.
Okay, so how does teaching and learning change when the classroom moves from a brick and mortar space to a digital environment?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And when you think about online learning, it's not just about taking our textbooks that we've had in the last 50 years and putting them online and teaching the same way. It's really a chance for us as educators to look at how do we approach learning each lesson? What's the best content to teach that lesson? So it's not just about taking courses and moving them online, but it's not unpacking an entire course and then asking how are we going to ask students to show what they know and do that in ways that are meaningful. How can we use the online platforms and engage students in better dialogue, go deeper, really pinpoint areas of interest, and allow for students to draw on some of their passions and their own personalized learning needs. For teaching, it's really fundamentally different too, because you may be using a combination of, like we are right now, talking at the same time, using the technology that exists, but you may be able to go back and watch archived videos. You may be able to access content in different ways. So managing not only those great teaching methods that have been traditionally successful, but also building another set of skills using technology. So it's really about rethinking the practice of teaching and empowering our professionals with these new tools and technologies, as well as unpacking courses and course design. We could do things in far different ways. The rest of society is really getting more modular in terms of being able to personalize bits of content, access information, and we're starting to see that in education through online learning.
Mhm. So what are some of the typical attributes or characteristics of a successful online learner? And in contrast, which attributes are associated with students who tend to struggle with online learning?
Yeah, one of the key attributes is that in the first 2 weeks of a class, actually contact with the teacher, contact and checking in. So if a student has struggled in a traditional environment, you still go to a place called school, and you're still interacting in some way, and you can get help right away. The biggest attribute is if a student has been struggling and they go into an online learning environment, maybe perhaps thinking it will be easier, and then that contact within the first 2 weeks is absolutely critical. So it may not be for everybody. If students are self-directed, self-managed, whether they're behind, whether they're ahead, the flexible pacing is one of the attributes that students like the most. But really helping students that may be struggling and need extra support, making sure that the students show up and you're connecting with them online is absolutely critical for success.
Mhm. It's interesting because, I earned my doctorate from Capella, and those who have the hardest time are those who can't self-manage,
Right.
because you don't have that professor there. You go see every, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday and Thursday. You have to really stay on top of your schedule and do the work, which is something I had to learn in the first couple of weeks. Like, okay, let's set this up. When schools are deciding, this looks pretty cool. And as you mentioned, we do have these gaps in teacher shortages, or we have gaps in not being able to offer these courses that our students need. What are some of the benefits and successes of schools that are offering online programs, and what are some of the drawbacks?
Yeah, I think one of the first reasons that schools start to offer online programs are certainly those gaps and opportunity in making new courses and teachers available. And when I talk about online learning, I am talking about a teacher instructor-led course using the internet. So there's a difference between just having digital content and a instructor licensed teacher teaching a course using an online learning tool or platform. So that's really important to keep in mind. You're talking about student and teacher contact and feedback loops and assessment and instruction. So when schools and districts get started, I think one of the things that they run into quickly is that when the teacher is at a distance, they have to make sure that their student supports where the student is taking the class or available. So if a student is in a school and taking it in a library or computer lab or in an online learning center, making sure that there is a great facilitator there that can help the student, whether it's with, I'm running into problems, I haven't heard from my teacher in a day, can you help me make contact? Students really need strong advocates and facilitators to help them. Or if they try to register, even the student services pieces, connecting them with counseling opportunities. So that assistance, one-on-one supports, I think is one thing that schools learn pretty quickly, beyond making sure that you have high quality instructors. And it's interesting, most teachers that go to teach online have an average of at least 8 years of experience. So that sort of is a myth buster that just younger teachers that are interested and more comfortable teaching or using online platforms. It's really about teachers that have mastered their trade and want to reach students in new and different ways, or perhaps want some of the flexibility that they see in other 21st century careers, such as, hey, I want to telecommute a little bit, or I'm going to go help take care of a parent and I just want to teach 1 or 2 classes. Now you have lots of new professional opportunities available for teachers beyond just a full-time job in a school that you can drive to. So it can be for a variety of reasons. Definitely to expand course options, and really, really important to focus on student supports and resources.
Mm-hmm. So what advice do you have for schools or districts that are thinking about offering distance learning programs? What are some of the infrastructure, pedagogical, and staff needs that must be considered?
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ways to start thinking about this is just to focus on the technology. And we try to encourage districts and school leaders to say, make the technology the last consideration. Don't lead with the technology. So start with, what are your academic goals? And sometimes the academic goals are thinking about big issues. What are big challenges you have? If you're looking at the fact that less than 50% of your students are at proficiency in math or reading, or you're having challenges with keeping students on track for graduation, then maybe rethinking how we do earning credits and credit recovery from the beginning. And what I mean is, why do we let a student go all the way through Algebra 1 with a 40% and wait until the end of the year and say, wow, you failed it, now we're going to cram you into summer school with the same textbook and hope that you're successful? I mean, maybe we need to think about, how do we help students go through progressions? How can online learning be a solution for addressing student needs as they go by? So some schools and districts are even thinking about, when students are going through content and curriculum, if they struggle, giving them modules for those sections so they can have different ways to access the courses or the course materials. So rethinking courses as just, you're taking it all online, or you're taking it all through a textbook, to having different ways for students to go through their pathways. So districts and schools that are getting started with this, starting with the learning goals, whether it's expanding access to courses, offering more AP classes, wherever the entry point is, then building out how we think about using these tools across our system and empowering all of our teachers and kids with the opportunities it affords.
Awesome, awesome. Now, before we go, I want to ask you about iNACOL and more about sort of how it is there to help those like myself who either work in blended or online environments, or oversee the training of teachers who will be working with students in those environments. What sort of conferences are available? What materials are available? How is it, I guess, will assist us in getting to that next level? Because I know I became a member because I was charged with overseeing a one-to-one Chromebook initiative in 2 locations. And I was like, okay, certain things I knew I was very comfortable with, but the other parts of it, of teachers blending up classrooms, what does an effective online course look like in terms of teachers creating courses and putting them into Schoology, the elements we've chosen, and what materials are best to go there, which materials are best to be taught face-to-face, and that sort of thing. So can you enlighten us?
I'm happy to, and thank you for asking the question. Of course, I love my organization because of members like you. We have 4,600 members across the U.S., and you ask, why does anyone join? It's to find other people like them that are really pioneering and creating the future of learning in our public school system. And so It's about, despite all of the challenges and barriers that we know, it's a very complex set of goals that we have to really rethink in the digital age what teaching and learning can look like. So our organization was founded as a nonprofit by school leaders and by educators that were starting up programs that were starting to teach online, to come together. And so we have a conference every year called the Blended and Online Learning Symposium. INACOL, INACOL.org is the website. And it's every fall. This year it's in San Antonio, Texas, but it's every fall. We have 3,400 people that come together, and there are sessions on online learning, and there are sessions on blended learning, and there are blended teachers and online teachers sharing with each other promising practices. The really exciting thing is there are people there that are getting so jazzed up. They're redesigning schools, or you think about school improvement plans, especially with the new federal laws, really focusing on continuous improvement and school improvement plans, really thinking about how do we redefine success for students with a bigger vision of academic schools plus the dispositions that students need to be successful in life, and how can we open up access and pathways. Yes, using the technology. It's really hard to do this without technology. It's critical, but with really rethinking curriculum design and how we can open up the doors to our students both inside and outside of school. So our nonprofit is really focused on hosting this conference, connecting, creating a movement, and also fighting policy fights at the federal and state level that may be barriers to high quality online learning.
Awesome. Folks, again, thank you. I'm jazzed about this podcast. It was cool. And when you watch, as always, you'll be able to see information on the organization and how to get in contact with Susan as well. So again, thank you, Susan, for being on the show.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and I'm always so jazzed every time I get an opportunity to work with schools, work with students, work with educators, work with people like you making the future happen. So thanks for helping to get the word out. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And as always, people, be you, EDU. Peace.